Welcome, everyone, to the second iteration of Oakridge Model United Nations, an environmentally focused conference preaching stewardship, environmental sustainability, and global awareness. The Secretariat team and staff have been working tirelessly since the moment the last iteration ended to bring you this conference. From slaving away at backgrounders, earnestly marketing, or even deciding the most minute of details, we've polished this conference to create the best possible experience for you. Whether you are a first-time delegate or a seasoned veteran with dozens of conferences under your belt, I hope everyone can learn something new here today. I hope everyone can challenge themselves from raising your placard and making your first ever speech, or even to persuade entire blocks and committees to change course. The ultimate goal of OakridgeMUN is to serve you, the delegate. So please, use this opportunity to enter with curiosity and to exit with courage. Before we continue, we are extremely excited to welcome our guest speaker, Hailey May, who is a policy changer with experience working in partnership with UN institutions and youth-led organizations. Hailey has advocated for stronger governance on an international scale at various climate action summits in both New York and Madrid. She has also created change at the provincial level through her work with the BC Green Caucus and the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia. Being named as a 2020 Top 25 Under 25 Environmentalist in Canada, we are honored to have Hailey May open our conference and hope delegates will be inspired by her youth stewardship. Thank you.
Hello to everyone. Congratulations on taking part in the Oakridge Model United Nations Conference. I hope that the next 2 days and your participation in Model UN overall bring you a renewed passion for a better world, new understanding, friendships, and some valuable experience in diplomacy and decision-making that you'll bring with you moving forward. I applaud you all for taking some of your valuable free time and applying it to becoming better leaders and engaging in real-world issues like the climate crisis, international trade, security, and relationship building. It is us, the young people of the world, who are engaged, experienced, and passionate overall that are really pushing systems change, and that change-making ability definitely starts with experiences like Model UN. My name is Hailey May, and I am pleased to be your keynote speaker today. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm recording this video from the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. This is otherwise known as Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. I was born and raised on the territory of the Coast Salish peoples, particularly the Musqueam people. This is known as Richmond, British Columbia, which I believe many of you will know, and you'll be participating from similar territory. For those who might be unfamiliar with the traditional territory that you are living on, I really encourage you to research that further and develop a little bit more of a connection with the history. So I'm honored to be speaking to you all today, and as someone who's only several years older than you, I must admit that I feel some imposter syndrome sitting here and speaking. It feels a little bit like I'm an elder Generation Zer. That being said, I hope that I can use the next several minutes to share some elder wisdom with you from my own experiences in global awareness, sustainability, and youth empowerment. So global awareness, sustainability, and youth empowerment. Those are the three pillars of this conference and foundational to the work that you are already doing, I'm sure, in preparation for it. If there's anything that I can speak to effectively, I know that I can certainly speak to those three things. So my career so far has been shaped by all three of those items. I am a policy nerd with a background in conservation science and applied management, and my experience spans from academia to the nonprofit sector to government. From earlier in my career, my work has focused on international diplomacy and working in collaboration with other young people. So in the next couple of minutes, I'll give you a bit of my background, and then hopefully I can tie it back into those three pillars that are so foundational to the work that you're doing. So I graduated with honors from the University of British Columbia with a Bachelor of Science in Conservation, majoring in Global Perspectives. I graduated in 2019, and so I've been about 2 years, I would say, full on in the workforce, and it has been what feels like a very wild 2 years, and I'm hoping that I can share a little bit of that experience with you. Starting almost immediately after graduating from university, I started working for an organization that a friend of mine started. And that organization is now known as Youth for Nature. Youth for Nature is really pivotal to the experience that I've had working in UN institutions, and I'm hoping that I can share a little bit more of a background into what it is and how foundational it is to the work that I've done with the UN, and hopefully share how you might be able to start your own movement or something similar. Before I do that though, I do want to share a little bit more of my other experience and then I'll tie back. So after university, I jumped almost straight into Youth for Nature and it was an absolute whirlwind. At the same time that I was doing that, I was really fortunate to be involved with the BC Council for International Cooperation, or BCCIC, as some of you might be familiar. They put on an annual delegation of youth to UN conferences, particularly the UNFCCC, so the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, their Conference of Parties, or COP. So it's UNFCCC COP. If you gain any knowledge over the next 2 days, is that the UN loves their acronyms. So UNFCCC COP is something that I was fortunate to attend as a youth delegate for BCCIC. After that period of time, I went straight into working with the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia, which is where I currently am located. So I went into the Legislative Assembly in 2020, and I essentially just never left. What I entered for was a 6-month internship program, and then I started working with the BC Green Caucus, and that's who I'm with today. So I currently am a Policy and Issues Officer with the BC Greens. I am also happy to say and kind of humbled by the fact that I am a top 25 under 25 environmentalist in Canada for 2020. That is something that I never anticipated would happen in my life, and I was nominated and accepted to that list, which I think is how I've gotten this experience to speak to you today, and so that is something really cool and unexpected for my career trajectory. I'm really grateful to be among those other 24 rockin' youth in Canada who are doing really great things for climate and sustainability in the environment. So that's me in a nutshell in terms of my experience, and I'm hoping I can tie it back a little bit to Youth for Nature and share what we were doing there, what Youth for Nature is, and what my experience is working with the UN. So Youth for Nature is an entirely youth-led nonprofit. We are based in Canada, so we're headquartered here legally, but we are global in scope. So we base ourselves in 6 UN regions. So the United Nations Environment Program has 6 global regions that they do their work in, and we mirrored that regionality in our own work. So those 6 regions are North America, Latin America and the Caribbean, Europe and Central Asia, Africa, West Asia, and Asia Pacific. And so when I say that we're global in scope, I mean that we have members from Youth for Nature, both staff and volunteers, who exist in every single one of those regions. And that's a really unique aspect to the work that we do, and it's something that I think really ties into the global awareness that you're trying to build today. So Youth for Nature, we're this collective of young people who are really impassioned on climate and biodiversity. And what we focus on particularly are what you might know as nature-based solutions. So nature-based solutions are essentially nature's way of sequestering carbon or absorbing carbon from the atmosphere on a very, very simplistic level. They do get quite complex if you want to get into the details of them. At its broadest level, essentially, nature-based solutions are nature's way of sucking carbon from the atmosphere. And that is something that is really building momentum around the world, particularly in the last few years. And so Youth for Nature was born out of a recognition that this is something that is up and coming, but it doesn't really have a youth voice, especially in the UN. And so what we did is we said, well, we're really passionate about nature-based solutions and about climate and biodiversity. And we noticed that there aren't youth who are talking about this or who are really owning this space and advocating for the nature-based solutions that we want to see as the future generation. And that is where Youth for Nature came in. So Youth for Nature started in May of 2019, and it has grown crazily in size since then, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it. So I started off as a volunteer with Youth for Nature, and we were originally focused a little bit more locally in Vancouver, and then that grew to the regional scope that we have today. And we, less than 6 months after launching, we were really fortunate to bring Youth for Nature and a delegation of youth from many different countries to the UNSG, so the United Nations Secretary General's Climate Action Summit in New York in September of 2019. And there, that was my personal first time ever at a UN conference, and it was incredible. If you're also a UN nerd, I really recommend going to UNHQ in New York City. It is a really, really cool experience to be in that building. And there we spent a week essentially just running straight out on the ground, trying to build our own name for ourselves, but also participate in as many conferences as we could, as many plenaries, discussions, panels, talks. We wanted to be everywhere, and that was really fascinating and really gave me a critical eye for the way that the UN works in terms of bureaucracy and diplomacy. After UNSG CAS, which is the acronym, again, those acronyms, UNSG CAS, that was September 2019, then we were fortunate to build that momentum and keep going, and we ended up building another delegation of youth to the UNFCCC's United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change's Conference of Parties 25, or COP25, and that was in Madrid, Spain, in December of 2019. That experience was really fulfilling in many different ways from what CAS was. It was 2 weeks, and it was 16-hour days every single day. It was very, very, very intense, and it was a really, really wonderful experience, and I'm very grateful for it. There are a lot of lessons that we learned there in terms of restoring energy while also trying to make really effective change. So COP25, or COP in general, from the UNFCCC, is the biggest annual climate conference in the world. Every big name in climate, or any person who wants to be at that conference. And what it is, it's a combination of nonprofit organizations, youth organizations, academics, and government, so bureaucrats, diplomats, that come together at this conference and talk climate. So if you're familiar with the Paris Agreement on climate change, COP is where the Paris Agreement was actually created in 2015. And it's this wonderful exercise in diplomacy and decision making and kind of relationship building, in the sense that you're trying to maintain relationships with other countries or other organizations while also trying to push the agenda that you think is the best for the climate. And it's very complicated, and I don't want to use my time to go too much into it. If you are interested in it, I really suggest doing your own research. Apologies. I currently have a cold. It is not COVID, I promise. I did get tested. And so at UNFCCC, I really got to understand the UN more so than I think I did at CAS, in the sense of I saw behind the veil a little bit, and I saw people pushing for their own objectives, and I saw things fail, and I saw things go really well. And it was a really good experience working within the UN system, and it really instilled a sense of purpose in me for recognizing that there are really wonderful things to do, but there's also a lot of change that needs to happen at those UN systems. And so as a young person, I am looking towards my career down the line, and that's something that I absolutely am passionate about. And I hope that in your own work over the next couple of days, you're looking at ways to change those systems too. So working with Youth for Nature, it was a really interesting experience, and it still is. So I should say that now that I work with the Legislative Assembly, I still volunteer with Youth for Nature because it is something that I find really wonderful and gives me a lot of passion. So Youth for Nature, in being youth-led, it is really unique in the UN institution, in the sense that youth are really only in the past couple of years gaining their credibility, I would say, working with UN organizations. And so my experience is really with the climate and biodiversity organizations with the UN. You might be interested in other things, and I know that there are youth spaces there as well. And it's a really cool time to be young and to be wanting to work with the UN, because they're finally starting to understand our significance and our perspective, and why that is so valuable and being brought to the table and listened to and brought into decisions. So it's a fascinating time. It's a wonderful time to be young. It's also a terrifying time to be young if you know anything on climate and sustainability. Sorry, I hate to be a downer. I think most of you who have some interest in climate and sustainability probably know the state of the world at the moment. But it's really cool to be young and to be starting to be offered those opportunities. So working at a youth-led organization really broadened my worldview in the sense of working with people all around the world, while also getting me in the door with UN organizations. So we've had meetings with the World Wildlife Fund. We've had meetings with the United Nations Environment Program, with Oxford University on their Nature-Based Solutions Initiative, meetings with diplomats from different countries, meetings with agencies that are really like creating these coalitions between huge nonprofits, and all of that stemmed from this one decision to be participating in an organization that I believed in and then a message that I believed in. And that was fantastic. So before I jump a little bit further away from Youth for Nature, I want to shout out some Canadian nonprofits that maybe you have an interest in and that we've worked with and that I know are wonderful, wonderful things and full of wonderful people. So if you have any interest in climate sustainability and like the nonprofit sector in Canada, I can give you some recommendations. And those are Global Youth Biodiversity Network Canada, Youth and Landscapes, and then there's Student Energy, Youth Climate Lab, and others. So if you're interested in those, I would definitely look up those organizations and then hopefully go down a deep, deep rabbit hole of all the other ones that exist in Canada. So that is very much just a subset of them. Internationally, there are organizations like YOUNGO, which is the Youth Constituency to the UN, specifically for climate, and other organizations like GYBN. So GYBN, I mentioned the Canadian chapter, but there's actually chapters all around the world. Or Youth for Nature, if you want to go international. Those are some really wonderful youth organizations that are kind of working in climate sustainability that I would recommend you go check out if you'd like to. So jumping a little bit further into the pillars that you have framing your conference and that I think are really important. So sustainability, my own experiences with sustainability, it kind of started from a young age, I should say. So I've always been passionate about conservation and environmental management. I actually kind of grew into my love for sustainability and environmentalism from a very simple perspective. I was raised on a farm and I saw nature and the environment as something that you needed to work against and to battle. And that just grew an interest in environmentalism, which brought me to university, which broadened my perspective 1,000 times over. I would highly recommend, if any of you are going to university and you think it's the right thing for you, go and take an environmental science course or take a conservation course at that and just have your mind blown in terms of the politics of environmental management. It's fascinating. So sustainability has always been something that I've been interested in, but it's changed in what it means to me over the years, especially as I gain more and more experiences. So it started off with my perspective as a young farmer thinking that you needed to battle nature. And that was what sustainability was. It's not. And then I moved into university and I broadened my horizons and understood that sustainability is something that is really intersectional. It's about systemic change. It's about being sustainable in all elements of life. And so you're looking to the future generations, which is where we come in as youth, in the sense that sustainability is building that future that we want to see while also maintaining a quality of life at the moment. Sustainability is fascinating and it can mean so many different things to so many different people. And so I challenge you to think about what you mean when you say sustainability and what it means to you personally. Moving into youth empowerment, I think I've spoken a little bit about it, but I definitely want to speak a little bit more. So as a young person, I suppose youth advocacy and activism is something I've been doing my whole life. It really came to fruition though when I was working with Youth for Nature. So Youth for Nature, like I said, is entirely youth-led. And we got ourselves into some really cool situations being youth and advocating for youth at the UN level. So I was working with other fiercely dedicated young people from around the world with a really impassioned sense of purpose, which cemented and challenged my beliefs about conservation, sustainability, corporate financing, and the systemic impacts of simple decisions. One thing I want to touch on that I'm sure many of you have likely heard, when you're a young person and we're in this era of people starting to give more validation to young people as like real stewards of change, one thing that I've heard time and time again is youth are the leaders of tomorrow, that we are leading the change for the future. And while that is true, I would argue that we're actually leading the way today. We are really implementing effective change right here and right now as young people, as people who exist in 2021. We are driving so much of the change that's around the world, and I want to really highlight that. So climate strikes and the climate sense, the climate sphere are probably one of the easiest examples to think about that change. The Fridays for Future movement around the world, the Extinction Rebellion movement, those are two very well-known movements. There are many other grassroots movements. Those are something that I think are really affiliated with the youth movement. And that's wonderful. We are absolutely changing the conversation on climate. And that's fantastic. But there's also other things that we're doing because of those climate strikes and because of all the other things that have been going on at the same time. So because of that, those movements, we are in an era of real change. And I know I've mentioned this in a couple of different ways throughout this keynote speech, but what I really want to iterate is that we as young people have the power and the agency and the responsibility to be furthering that change for future generations, but also for our own. And I want you to really know that you shouldn't underestimate that power. For close to 2 years, I have volunteered and worked in youth-led spaces. I have spoken as a voice on panels at the UN. I have advocated for youth inclusion to tables full of uptight and bureaucratically aligned diplomats. And I know that my work is nowhere near done. I've probably made a very small dent in the broader movement for youth inclusion. And I hope that all of you take that space and step into it and try and advocate for yourselves and other youth as you move forward. So moving lastly into the last pillar, global awareness. Like I said, I've been interested in global awareness for most of my life. My conservation degree was focused in global perspectives, so that was looking at the intersections of conservation, land management, and areas around the world and how that impacts local communities. So global awareness is something that I really hold dear to the work that I do, especially as I went into work with Youth for Nature. That's something that was really pivotal to the work that we were doing, is understanding the different contexts of what one solution might work in, say, North America probably won't work in Africa, and understanding that and making sure that you're reaching out to people who have different experiences. And anytime that you're implementing a policy brief or a paper, trying to come into that understanding of how this is going to impact people in a different area than me. What are the different cultural beliefs of somewhere else? How do I adapt the policy or the advocacy that I'm doing to make sure that it's not centered in just my voice, that it's making accommodations for those regional differences? That is really, really important to the work that you will be doing around global awareness. That, I hope, covers the 3 pillars that you're working on today, and hopefully gives you a bit of an understanding of my background and why I'm talking. So at the beginning of the speech, I said that I feel like an imposter being here and speaking to you. What gives me the authority to say I know what I'm doing? I feel like I'm rambling up here to you and you're like, who is she? So at what level of experience, after how many titles, how many years, how many conferences do I get to say that I'm ready to pass on that knowledge? I've dealt with imposter syndrome for all of my career. My short career at this point, I hope it's a long one, with every opportunity that I've been given, from a research internship in India to attending UNSG CAS, UNFCCC COP25, drafting position papers to amending legislation, which I did for the first time actually earlier today. I have felt like there would be someone better than me in that role. Better grades, better references, better extracurriculars, better writing skills, better public speaking skills, better lived experience. And none of that is incorrect. At every point, there certainly was someone better for me for that role. But just because there is someone who is more than you on paper doesn't mean that you will not meet or even exceed the expectations that are given to you in the opportunity that you've been handed. That is the one thing that I do want to make clear here, is that you should own the opportunities that present themselves and know that many other people in the same room as you are also thinking that they shouldn't be there. So with every new paper you write, new position you develop, debate you partake in, conference you attend, job you apply for, mentorship relationship you build, you become a better version of yourself. And that is not to say that some of those things won't fail. They certainly will, and I can attest for that. But by saying yes and putting your name out there and participating in those processes, especially things like Model UN, you find yourself becoming a better version of yourself and gaining new opportunities. And then who knows, maybe in a few years you will find yourself giving a speech to another Model UN. It's a real place to be. So thank you for listening to me over the past several minutes. I hope that my experience is helpful to you in some way of feeling like you also should be taking chances and trying to participate in these spaces. Absolutely, you are welcome in them. I want to make that very clear, that you, as a young person, you have valid experiences, you have a valid voice, and you should absolutely be using it to be changing decisions down the line and to be voicing your own opinions. So again, best of luck over the next 2 days. The United Nations system is full of good and it's also full of conflict. I hope you see both the good and the bad and note the opportunities for change and how you fit into them. And then I hope you go and fight for that change in a way that makes sense to you. So take care. Thank you.
Good morning, fellow Secretariat, staff, and delegates. My name is Samuel Tung, and I am the Director of Logistics for Oakridge Model United Nations II. I'm here today to go over conference policy, and as well as a bit of conference logistics. So first of all, please upgrade to the latest version of Zoom so you can have access to the latest features. If you already have Zoom on your laptop or personal computer, click your personal icon on the top right and click check for updates. If not, specific instructions on upgrading to Zoom can be found by accessing the OakridgeMUN site. All right, now we'll move on to behaviors. The official language of OakridgeMUN in official proceedings and committee sessions is English. Delegates must refrain from speaking other languages out of respect for other delegates, staff, and secretariat. OakridgeMUN also enforces the zero tolerance policy for destructive, obnoxious, and hateful behaviors. These include disrupting the flow of conference, such as deliberately disobeying orders put out by secretariat and or staff. This also includes interrupting delegates and staff when they speak. This also includes bullying other delegates. This also includes using inappropriate and insensitive language that discriminates against other delegates' race, sexual orientation, gender, religion, nationality, and ethnicity. It also includes posting inappropriate and insensitive content, including nudity, graphic images, and content depicting the use of illicit substances, as well as possessing or using alcoholic substances, illegal drugs, tobacco products, and vaping devices. If a delegate is found doing those behaviors, the Secretariat team reserves the right to eject said delegate out of the conference immediately. Now we will go over the dress code. So in order to uphold the professionalism of the real UN, all delegates must wear Western business attire. For ladies, you can wear a dress, suit, skirt, or blouse, no jeans. For men, this means a suit or jacket with dress pants, no jeans as well, with a dress shirt and dress shoes, no sneakers. Both men and women have the option to go tieless, but only the top button of your dress shirt should be left undone. If a delegate is found inappropriately dressed by either the staff or the Secretariat, he or she reserves the right to ask the delegate to change clothes before a committee session. And lastly, I will go over Zoom etiquette. So whenever you're not speaking, please mute yourself so that we can hear the speaker loud and clear. Cameras are on at all times unless otherwise noted, and Zoom backgrounds are not allowed. With the exception of bathroom breaks and permission from a staff or a secretariat member, delegates are not allowed to leave OakridgeMUN for the duration of a committee session. And probably most importantly, you are not allowed to invite non-participants of OakridgeMUN onto a committee session. OakridgeMUN is for the people who have registered for OakridgeMUN and who have dedicated their time and research, not for people who are just there to hang out with their friends. You are here to learn. You can choose to read more about these as well as other conference logistics on our delegate handbook, located in oakridgemun.com/resources. That's oakridgemun.com/resources. I know it's a lot of information to take in, so should you have any questions, please let a secretariat or staff member know. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Now, countless hours of work from both staff and secretariat have gone into this conference, and I truly hope that all of you guys are able to enjoy the result we've produced. Now, before I open the conference, there's a couple key values that OakridgeMUN II has that I would like to briefly touch upon on. The first of which is sustainability. As we all know, climate change is one of the most prevalent issues of our time, and it's important for us to actively educate ourselves, actively discuss, and find a solution to a problem that has had an impact on us and will continue to have an impact in our everyday lives. This is why we would encourage all of you to be mindful of the environment in your committee sessions in the upcoming 2 days, as well as in your personal lives. Our second pillar is youth empowerment. Now, since all of you are here and actively participating in Model United Nations, I trust that you guys are all youth leaders. Which is why OakridgeMUN II is simply a platform for you to express your opinions and for you to challenge and learn more about the things that you want to do. We would encourage all of you to feel free to speak up because this is a safe environment and we want to hear everybody's opinions. Now, last but certainly not least is global awareness. It is important for us to think outside of our personal experiences here in North America. This is why OakridgeMUN has a variety of topics from international terrorism and legal to European Union, which covers Eurocentric issues, to the Persian Gulf crisis that you'll be discussing in UNSC. We actively encourage everybody to be more informed about these prevalent global issues and think outside of the bubble we live in.